What started out as a fairly typical project for us quickly turned into a disaster, as this project took over 6 months to complete from the moment we started. When you're doing these types of renovations, a lot can and will go wrong, and I think this video is the perfect example of just that. So be sure to watch to the end to see just what went wrong and what we hope will never happen again. Like so many of the bathrooms we tear apart, this one had featured a tub that was a complete waste of space, although in a very unique way. This thing was so shallow, I'm not sure it would have even covered my legs, so getting rid of that was a must do. But of course, we didn't stop there, because this project, like so many that we do, is a complete gut, which means we'll be ripping off every last piece of tile, fixture, everything within this space, right down to the studs. And you might be wondering, well, why go to that extent? You see, this bathroom had been remodeled quite a few times and everything was done incorrectly, which means we had to fix it. And in order to do that properly, that means really just getting down to the bones so that we can have a true fresh start. See, this is a really big problem in the world of contracting, and I'm sure many of you are aware or maybe have had experiences with this, but contractors as a whole just kind of have a really bad reputation. So often things are just done half-heartedly, corners are cut, and all sorts of problems develop because of this. So while there are absolutely situations where you can go in and make repairs, there are also situations where you just have to burn it all to the ground. And this was most certainly one of those. On top of that, the clients had been living in this home for many years and this was their only full bathroom. Because of that, they figured now was the time, let's get this thing done and let's make some changes so that it fulfills our needs a little bit better. Every time I meet with potential clients to do a quote, there is a varying degree of forethought. And what I mean by that is some clients will just have a general idea of what they want. It's pretty simple, remove and replace, and others might have a complete drawing, every little detail figured out, and this was the latter. I don't actually have a preference towards either type. I think both can be fun and both come with their own pros and cons. In this case, the design that the client presented to me, I actually really liked, and it was probably something that I would have done a very similar design for. When it comes to my specific role in the design phase of these projects, a lot of the time I will be the one to kind of create the floor plan, and then the clients will choose out all of the finishing materials. That would include your things like tiles, paint color, fixtures, all the stuff that you actually see for the most part will be up to them. However, as I mentioned for this one, the floor plan was mostly created by the client, and then I just kind of took a look at it, refined a few things, and then we went from there. What you're seeing now is the demolition of the wall that divides the bathroom from the primary bedroom's closet space. The existing bedroom floor plan was quite large and had a lot of unutilized space. So the clients kind of figured, hey, what if we take that closet, absorb it into the bathroom, and then for the bedroom, we can just add some custom built-ins after the fact and reclaim our storage space that way. And I thought this was a fantastic idea. Again, as I had mentioned, this was the only full bath in the house, so why not make it a little bigger, more luxurious, get that space that was otherwise unutilized, and really just refine a whole lot. And that is exactly what we did. We always try to avoid taking down ceilings in these renovations. However, in this project, I just thought this was the best course of action. While maybe not pictured all too well on camera, in person, these ceilings were atrocious. Everything was peeling, and with the amount of relocates and mechanical changes we would be making, at this point, I just thought it was our best course of action. But then we were stuck looking at a bathroom that had no walls, no ceiling, and an old plank subfloor. We were still in destroy everything mode, so I think what came next was just kind of inevitable. Okay, look, the truth is, removing these subfloors wasn't a truly rash decision. In fact, it was one that was well thought out, because we had a ton of mechanical relocates to do, and we would need access into the joist bays in order to do so. This house had original copper drains, which was a first for us, and I figured my best first step here was just to convert that over to ABS. I started out by roughing in the toilet drain, and from there branching out and picking up the shower tub and faucet. All of these would need the associated venting as well, and that's where having that ceiling ripped down came in handy. For those of you that are unaware, my background is actually in electrical. So back in the day when I was on big job sites, there'd be plumbers there. We always had a bit of a camaraderie, kind of calling each other different names and such. And so now I feel like a bit of a traitor anytime I'm working with plumbing, becoming the very thing I swore to once destroy. But here we are. Life is a journey. And I suppose I might as well provide a little more context to how I got here and became a full-time bathroom remodeling contractor. You see, I was an electrician, and shortly after becoming fully licensed, I realized I would never make enough money doing this to afford a home. So I did the only logical thing someone my age might think to do, and became a content creator instead. Okay, obviously that's a bit of a joke, but it's not all that far stretched. The fact that I am able to remodel these bathrooms, film the projects, put them on YouTube, and then earn some additional revenue that way is the only way that I was able to actually afford a home for myself. And I think that's just kind of a really sad commentary on the current state of society, and I don't want to get too deep into this whole thing, but the fact that the people that build the homes can't afford to live in the homes is just absolutely wild to me. But anyways, you saw us rough in all the drains, and for every drain, we will need water lines. So now just using PEX A, which is the nice expandable version to run a hot and cold line to the vanity, tub, and shower. Every time I post one of these videos, I always have some old head telling me how PEX is the devil and I should be using copper. And I get it, copper is an amazing material. It's been around for a really long time and has proven to be extremely reliable. But that doesn't mean that new materials don't have a place either. Every year we have new and greater technologies coming out for us to learn how to use. And sure, not all of them are going to be great successes, but some of them will. And I think it's a shame to ignore these and just always rely on the thing that you already know. Take what we're working on currently. You just saw us sistering up the existing joist in the floor. The purpose of that is so that we can recess areas of the subfloor and create a curbless shower. While this isn't a brand new concept, this is something that's becoming a lot more popular, and a good reason for that is the new technologies that enable this to be so much easier to build. Old techniques, old materials, new materials, they all have a time and a place. And just because one is used doesn't mean the other is necessarily wrong. But with all of the mechanicals now being relocated, or at least everything that needs the floor access to do so, we can get the subfloor closed up again. And we're just going to use some new plywood to do this, and this immediately made the space feel a lot safer and cleaner. You might be wondering why I included kayak footage in a bathroom remodeling video, but that's just me trying to find flat on this existing wall here. Because every wall in this bathroom will be getting tiled and we'll be using very large tile to do so, we need everything to be nice and flat. While there are many different techniques you can use to get a flat wall, this wall was so bad that we just opted to completely sister it up instead. Not only will this let us get the wall to be flat, but we can also get it to be plumb at the same time, and it's a relatively cheap and easy way to do so. When we roughed in the toilet drain, we did know that we were planning on doing this, so we did just kind of rough that toilet out a little bit further to accommodate for that, so everything worked out really nicely. Hey there! I hate asking for this, but if you're still watching the video at this point and you're enjoying it, if I could just maybe ask you to take a quick second, hit that like button or check to see if you're subscribed. It really helps out the channel and ensures that I can continue making this type of content. These videos take a long time to make, but if you do or don't, just thank you so much for being here. If it wasn't obvious already, this is an older house. It is from the 50s, and most of our projects are typically from the 80s and up. So there are some building techniques that were used that we don't see that often. Like right now, for example, this exterior wall that has no insulation. So we're going to start by putting some Tyvek on it and then framing out a new wall in front of it. This way we'll be able to put in some insulation and vapor barrier and really get this space feeling a whole lot warmer and more cozy. We are using pressure treated wood, which is just completely unnecessary. Our original plan had been something a little different that just didn't really work out. So instead, we're just framing out a more traditional wall using pressure treated lumber. I know there's a saying they don't build them like they used to, and I gotta say, I am quite glad for that. I know there's a whole lot of bias in what I am about to say, but when we are taking on these projects, generally speaking, the newer the house, the better constructed it is. And I know, this isn't always the case. I'm just saying this has been our personal findings. And again, a lot of bias within that, a lot of reasons for that to be the case. However, I'm just saying if I were presented with 2 bathrooms and knowing nothing else other than the year, I am going to be choosing to work on the newer one just because I am more likely to run into fewer problems. And yes, obviously something that's older will have had more time to age and for things to go wrong. Duh. A crazy take, right? But I'm just speaking, even the building techniques themselves, they have gotten better. They have left fewer room for error. You might be wondering why we're cosplaying as Breaking Bad or maybe something else. This is just because the itchiness from the insulation really irritates us. These suits are cheap. They cost maybe $10 a piece, so it's just an easy way to prevent that irritation. The insulation and vapor barrier does of course mark the end of our rough-in, so at this point all of our framing, all of our mechanicals have been run, and now we can prep for putting on some board. This is always one of the absolute best moments in any project because it finally feels like progress is being made. The first day, our clients will come in at the end of the day, we go over everything, but they have that moment of, whoa, like it's just completely different, right? The demo typically happens in about a day, and it's a huge visual change. And then the next few days, depending on the job, there really isn't a lot visually that's happening. Mechanical changes can take a long time to rough in, depending on the exact scope of work. So until this moment, you kind of feel like you're in purgatory, and I'm always a little self-conscious of that. The last thing I want to do is be that contractor that starts a project and then just disappears for a period of time, leaving you in limbo. And of course, that's not the case. Once we start a project, we're here every day until it's complete. However, I still don't love that feeling of progress not progressing. To install this tub, we will be using a mortar bed. However, typically I would put a piece of plastic underneath it. I didn't want to take that chance with this tub in particular, as it will be a built-in tub, but the tile needs to be completely flush to the side of it for the aesthetic that the clients wanted. As such, I wanted that mortar to bond completely to the subfloor so that once we started framing around it, we didn't have any chance at all of it shifting in any way. While the majority of our projects do use freestanding tubs, I think that for this specific project, this was the best case scenario. The finished result was really beautiful, and I thought it just fit into the space quite nicely. Everyone has different stances on freestanding tubs versus built-in, and a lot of people on the YouTube comment section make their opinion very clear on their preference. However, for my own preference, I just find it comes to a case-by-case scenario. Some bathrooms, some layouts, I think freestanding tubs are beautiful, and others a built-in could be the better choice. Ultimately though, both will serve the same function of sitting there, hardly ever being used, so really it comes down to just what you like visually. Now, this may come as a huge shock to some of you, but showers do in fact get wet, and some of that water will eventually penetrate underneath the tile and grout, and as such, we need a strong waterproofing system in place underneath. And I can't think of a better system to use other than Schluter. Now, if you are familiar at all with this channel, you know that in pretty well all of our videos on bathroom renovations, we've been using Schluter in their products. However, I am really happy to announce that for this project, Schluter was kind enough to send all of the materials to us free of charge, and that was really cool. So huge thank you to Schluter for doing that, as we have been huge supporters of them and their products for quite some time now. I truly believe in this waterproofing system in their products. I mean, everything just works really well. It's easy to use, easy to install. So yeah, thank you to Schluter for this.
might be a sham. I'm not gonna question it. I'm not looking again.
One of my all-time favorite features that can be put into a bathroom is heated floors. Being a Canadian, our winters can get a little bit chilly and porcelain tile loves to transmit that cold right to your feet. So I think by putting in heated floors, it's just a really nice high-end feature that enhances the bathroom by quite a bit. Once again, we will be making use of some Schluter products in order to pull this off. The one you're seeing now is the Peel and Stick Vitra Heat. I love this product. The installation is so quick and easy. You just cut it to size with a knife, you peel off the back, and then you stick it down. You will have noticed that we did prime our subfloors with their primer prior to the installation of this, and that's just going to help to get a really secure bond. On top of that, not only does this allow us to embed the heating cables, but it is also a form of waterproofing, so we will be able to integrate this into the Curdy board you had just saw us install previously and create a nice waterproof system not only within the shower space, but a good distance outside of it as well. Bathroom renovations can be quite expensive, that's no secret, so heated floors aren't gonna be within everyone's budget. However, if you do have the budget for this feature, I really do think it is worth it, at least if you are living in maybe a colder climate like myself. If you haven't ever experienced heated floors before, it's really hard to convey just how nice of a feature they are, but I also understand that everyone's gonna value different things. This is the Schluter Curdy shower pan, and I always get a bunch of questions regarding this. Yes, it has the slope built into it. That is one of the main purposes of this product. It is one of my favorite products too because of how lightweight and easy it is to use. Just like the Curdy board on the walls, it's just foam with a waterproofing membrane on top of it, which makes it really easy to work with and install. You can cut it down to size. It comes in a bunch of different size options to begin with, and I love that part of it. But once everything has been prepped and ready, we got our board on the walls, we got our shower pan roughed into size, we can now start the actual waterproofing process. You can see we just mixed up some Schluter all set thin set. We went on the runnier side of the manufacturer's specs as per the back of the bag, and then we can start using the Curdy trowel to trowel out thin set. You want to use directional troweling, that's where you're getting those notches flowing in the same direction, and then you can just apply your banding over every corner, seam, and screw hole. When I first started out, the very first shower I ever did, in fact, was my mom's shower. And I used the Curdy membrane system. That's the sheet type system where you would put up a backer board, say drywall, and then cover it in a giant sheet of the Curdy. And while that system is great, it works well. Now, doing this professionally, a huge part of the project is trying to create more efficiency and speed up our processes. That's why we switched to the Curdy board. It's just a lot faster, easier to work with. It costs a little bit more, sure, but I think it's well worth it when you factor in the labor and the time saved. You can see now getting in the shower pan itself. So we troweled out a bunch of thin set on the floor there using a 1/4 inch by 3/8 inch square notch trowel, directional troweling, and then we're gonna put the pan in place. We were just a couple inches short on either side, so we just took some rips off of the other ends of the pan to fill in those gaps. Anything bigger than this, and you would want to be using dry pack to fill them in instead. However, I was more than comfortable with this small of a gap, just using the ripped off piece of foam. And then again, just applying more of that banding everywhere, ensuring that we have a fully waterproof installation. When it comes to tiling, we always start with the floor. It's just my preferred order of operation. And when it comes to the shower floor, there are a number of options you have here. You could use a smaller mosaic tile that's just going to conform to the slope of the pan. Maybe you want a larger tile where you're going to put in some relief cuts so the big tile can conform to the different slopes of the pan as well. Well, our client on this job, I think, wanted to give me a little bit of a challenge and instead gave me some 8x8 square tile with a design in it. This tile isn't small enough that you can just throw it in with no relief cuts, and it's not big enough that you're just going to have a couple of nice relief cuts that are kind of easy and seamless to make. So instead, you'll see that I did just take down some ripped pieces of plywood to make a template. I'm going to transfer that over to where I have a bunch of these tiles laid out, and then I can mark all of my edges, my drain grate, and put in these diagonal lines that will be the relief cuts or the envelope cut to conform to the shower pan. The design on the tiles itself actually provide an additional little challenge I wouldn't have thought of before. When you're up close looking at this tile, trying to ensure all your grout lines are consistent, the design eventually starts kind of playing tricks on you. It's like kaleidoscoping, doing all sorts of things. Definitely wasn't something I had ever experienced before, but it was just a fun little challenge. I also want to note that when it comes to tile, there is both rectified and unrectified tiles. Typically, those large format 12 by 24 and up tiles you see will be rectified, meaning that after the firing process, they've been cut, grinded to have those sharp 90-degree, perfectly uniform edges, whereas an unrectified tile, like what I'm installing now, will have some variance in the size and shape. It's because of this when working with a tile like this, although I will use some spacers sporadically, for the most part, I am just kind of eyeballing the grout lines, looking for consistency that way, because if you just rely solely on the spacers, eventually the size differences in the tiles will start to throw off those grout lines and it will be noticeable. With the floors completely tiled and covered, we can then move on to the walls. And as I had previously noted, every wall in this bathroom will be tiled. Any outside corners will be featuring a miter cut. That is where the tile will be kind of beveled on the edge so that it appears to wrap around any corners. And for this bathroom, we will be using 24 by 48 large format porcelain tiles. I love big tiles like this. Visually, I think they're just beautiful. My actual favorite size to work with is 24 by 24, almost solely just because the wet saw that we can use for that size is smaller and easier to work with. However, this size is great too. It probably wouldn't be my recommendation for a beginner, as the size does make it a little bit harder to work with, harder to cut. However, if you do have the capabilities, I do think it is a great option. When it comes to the niche, that is the recessed shelf going in this shower, those of you familiar with this channel know that I love to have that niche correspond to a grout line. However, for this job, we did want that first grout line to correspond to the tub instead. Therefore, the second higher grout line would be too high to have a niche at the preferred height. As such, I instead opted to just have it at the traditional 48 inches we like to have it for. I find that just to be a nice comfortable height for people. And then we did poke a little hole for our low voltage wire because we will be putting an accent light in this later on. And I do just want to mention on that note that Schluter does actually make their own lighted niche kits that are approved for warranty and are going to be the best option if you want this feature. When it comes to accent lighting, the purpose isn't always to just illuminate the space. I sometimes get people confused about that. Why do you need a light in the niche? Well, we don't need a light in the niche, right? We don't need that for actual like lighting purposes. It's just to enhance the space. Accent lighting serves the purpose of just giving that grander feel. It makes the space feel a little higher end, more of a luxury vibe to it. That's what we're doing with the accent lighting. It's not so that you're going to be able to see everything and read the shampoo bottles. Anytime we're installing the first row of tile, you'll notice we got that green laser line going. I've spoken about this many times. It is crucial when working with tile this size that your first row is level, and the laser is the best way to achieve that. We are using 1/16 grout lines, which has a very small margin of error, so we need everything to be absolutely perfect. And you will also notice at the bottom of tiles, just a little small red wedge on occasion to give our little micro adjustments where we might need them. You notice that the niche here is larger than the width of a tile. In hindsight, maybe we should have reduced that by 4 inches to just have the left and right grout line run right through it. However, we would have lost some niche space, and every client is going to have their own preference when it comes to that. Periodically, you'll see I have a yellow tool on the tiles. That is the DeWalt Grabo. It's just a vacuum suction battery powered device of sorts. And it's really useful if you're using these heavier, larger tiles to get a nice grip on them. It's not necessary at all, but if you're doing a lot of this work, it really helps out. While it may look easy in a nice sped up time-lapse format like what this video is, the amount of prep involved with this tub, trying to get all our measurements, all our framing, everything exactly spot on to have that grout line work out like it did was a ridiculous amount of work, but it was so worth it. I love the way that this tub turned out. It really tested me. Of course, there are some small things I could improve on for the next time, but that is part of the job with every project that we do. Constantly, we're trying to get better, improve our crafts. Overall, just really happy with how this all turned out. I just want to take a quick second and acknowledge my little bit of a gap from posting videos here on YouTube for a good bit now. As it turns out, trying to run a company that takes up all of my time and then making these long format YouTube videos on top of that isn't the most sustainable of practices. So moving forward, I am just going to be scheduling my jobs a little less aggressively, which will give me more time to make these videos. As such, I will be introducing a member option on the channel. And look, just by being here watching the video, that is all the support I need. Okay, this is just something if you feel like you've gained a lot of value from these videos and you want to support in a little bit of an extra way. I am not expecting anything at all. Please don't do this if it's not something you have money for, seriously. However, for every project video like this that I do, a few days after, I'm planning on maybe just making a little bit of like a review, my thoughts, breakdown video on each project, which will be for any members. I'm not paywalling any content behind this that was previously available. This is just sort of a little bit of a bonus video, but again, just if you have any interest at all, that will be available. Any questions you have that you want me to include in that video, if that is something you have an interest in, please ask down below. And thank you so much regardless. This here will be an access panel for the tub, but it's gonna be built out of the exact same tile. All I did was I marked a nice square on some tape, and then I took my grinder to cut it out. And this is something I could improve on for next time. I have seen some people online doing something similar, but they'll use like little Dremels, smaller blades to get a cleaner cut, a smaller cut. Whereas here I was limited to the thickness of my grinder blade to make this access panel. I did also notice that my thin set coverage with these tiles specifically wasn't the greatest, and I know that isn't the case anywhere else. It was solely because I did have that three-way miter joint, so I didn't get the coverage that I should have gotten or that I get elsewhere. So just something to improve on for my next time doing that sort of a cut. I know that I need to use some more thin set and really watch to see my coverage there. Grouting might honestly be one of the worst parts of a bathroom renovation, and epoxy grout just makes that even worse. This stuff is brutal to apply. You have a much shorter work time. It's harder to actually get it into the joints. It's more expensive. The haze, you got to be a lot more careful with cleaning that off the tiles. Otherwise, it can be really almost impossible to get rid of. So a lot of negatives to this product, but they're all made up for with the pros. You see, epoxy grout won't stain or let water penetrate it in the same way that your more traditional grouts will. I remember I did a bathroom for a client a long time ago, and a couple years after the renovation was finished, I went back to that client's house and I saw their shower. And I noticed that the grout in the shower floor had all discolored, and I didn't love that. Obviously, it's grout. It was a light gray grout in a shower floor. It's gonna discolor. And there are things you can do on the maintenance side to kind of resist that. But the point of the epoxy grout is that we're gonna greatly reduce the amount of maintenance required. When I build these showers and these bathrooms, maintenance is a huge part of it. So this is just one of those details that we have included with our builds that I think really takes us up a notch. The first time I ever mitered tiles, I did just fill those joints with grout. And while that might look okay initially, eventually over time that grout will crack and start to fall out. You can try maybe having better luck with an epoxy grout. You could try even filling that joint with silicone, but the truth is the best thing you could do is actual epoxy. What I did here is I color matched epoxy to be as close to the tile as my eyes could tell, and then I'm going to tape it off and fill in those joints. Not only is this going to strengthen those outside corners, however, it's also going to look really good. You see, the problem with filling it with some other sort of material is you can't really shape it. Whereas with the epoxy here, with using the correct timings, you can kind of let it cure, start shaping it, cut excess off with a knife, wait even more, sand it, and you can give it almost a rounded over corner effect that I think is a really clean look. While we used epoxy for our outside corners, our inside corners will be getting a color matched silicone. This is going to provide a nice expansion joint, it's waterproof, and it's just going to look really nice. My first few bathrooms I used tape to get these nice clean lines. However, since then I've switched over to some soapy water, spray it down, and then you can use a popsicle stick or some sort of a tooling device to give it the shape that you want. To create the access panel, or well, the accessibility of the access panel, I did just use these magnets, which I spaced appropriately so that the tile would sit flush with the surrounding tile, and you can use a little suction cup tool like that if you ever need to open it. And there we have it. If you are located within the Mississauga or surrounding areas and are in need of a bathroom renovation, my website will be in the description. You can go there, submit a form, and maybe we can work together one day. Now I know what you guys are thinking. Wait a sec, I thought this took 6 months. What happened? Well, it did take 6 months, but not on our end. We finished our work in the exact amount of time that we said it would take. However, our client did use a custom cabinet builder for their vanity, and that ended up taking 6 months just to get it to the state that it's in currently. They had numerous delays, shoddy workmanship, all sorts of repairs that had to be done, and still, to this day, needs some touch-ups. Fortunately, the bathroom was otherwise usable. You know, the tub, the shower, the toilet. No sink, no vanity to use, but the footage you're seeing now is 6 months worth of usage for this bathroom. I think it looks amazing considering that. Otherwise, that's all I got for this one. Thank you so very much for taking time out of your day to watch this video. If you liked it, hit that like button on your way out. If you want to see more of this content, you can subscribe. In fact, the next video is already made, ready to go. Other than that, thank you again. Have a beautiful day.